Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you. Our guest today is a fascinating lady. Her name is Bev Johnson. She is an organization development and leadership development specialist, an Enneagram trainer, and has created a new systems approach for cultural audits. However, she also has a very compelling, powerful, and empowering story of healing from a medical crisis. And that is what we're going to focus on today. So, Bev, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. It's great fun to be here with you, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you so much. I love talking to you. The first time we talked on the phone, I think we talked for over an hour.
And I think for everything from hair color to organizations and anything else. Always good. Red to red.
Red to red. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we had such a wonderful conversation. We had to do a follow-up call the next day. So it's really fun. So I'm so excited that you're here. And I'm just going to turn this over to you. What I would like for you to do is to tell us about your medical crisis, what happened, building up to it, and how you actually found your own path to health and healing from it.
Okay. Well, I've been I think, very healthy person. I've worked a lot and have had no major illnesses. And it was a Halloween, actually. In 2017, my husband and I were out for a walk, not in our neighborhood. And it was a gorgeous day. And about a fourth of a mile into the walk, I had the most excruciating pain you can ever imagine. Nothing I'd felt before. And it literally stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, oh my God, I don't even think I can get back to the car. And I was gasping for breath. And I mean, it was horrible and came from nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And so when we finally could get me back to the car, we went straight to the emergency room. This was in 2017.
Wow.
And they ran all kinds of tests, did all kinds of imaging, and could not find a thing wrong with me. But then they took an x-ray after all the CAT and all this and found pneumonia, of all things. And I didn't have a cough, I didn't have a cold, nothing, no symptoms at all. So they put me in the hospital. I'm making this a much shorter story, you can imagine. And they found something that puzzled them. It ended up that my diagnosis was interstitial lung disease.
Wow.
I know. It's like, where'd that come from? And what is it anyhow? But I ended up going to National Jewish Hospital and became, one of their patients and under the watchful eye. They're supposedly the number one institution for pulmonary respiratory issues in the whole United States, Mm-hmm. And they weren't too concerned. What interstitial is just a lot of little cysts in the lining of your lungs, likely benign. They are benign and very slow growing. They said you probably had this for a long time and you will have it for a long time. It's not going to change very dramatically. And the only symptoms I ever had was if I go above like 9,000 feet or something, I'm kind of short-winded. Mm-hmm. Other than that, life just rocked along. Like, I didn't even have the diagnosis, but it made me think. The interesting timing is that it was 3 days before the 1-year anniversary of my mother's death. And what I know about myself and others of this Enneagram type is that we can postpone emotions. And I've read a lot over the years about the connection of emotions and disease. And the lungs happen to be the place where grief resides.
Absolutely.
Sure. And so I thought, you know what? I have not grieved my mother's death sufficiently. We were so close, and I miss her desperately even now, 4 years later. And so I started, studying things about the emotional underpinnings of disease. So I was kind of on that path. So fast forward to May of 2020, 3 years later, and I'd had no symptoms, nothing had happened. I was coming up from the basement, climbing our stairs. And when I got to the top of the stairs, it was that same bring you to the knees, sudden, horrible spasming in my abdomen. And this was after the pandemic started, so nobody's wanting to go to ER. So I, just took pain pills and rocked on, hoping that it'd go away. And it did. But it also came right back. It was just horrible. And finally, I did go to the ER. And again, they could not find a thing wrong with me. It's nothing showing up on imaging, but there was something dramatically wrong. I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't. I got winded real quickly. So I went to my pulmonologist. I went to my primary care doctor, who sent me to a cardiologist, and finally a gastroenterologist. And all these people are doing tests, with nothing showing up. After about a month of this, the consensus was I should have my gallbladder out. Nothing was showing up wrong with my gallbladder, but I was desperate. I thought, well, if it can help this pain, I've got to do something. So on June 5th of last year, I had my gallbladder removed.
Wow.
And, it was the weirdest thing. This was a day surgery. My husband couldn't even come in or anything. The surgeon came to me in the recovery room and was kind of shaking his head. And I thought, oh, this will be good. What is this?
Oh, God.
And he said, I have literally done thousands of these procedures. And it's very straightforward. You go in, it's laparoscopic.
Right.
You go in, you lift up the liver, you go behind there, you get the gallbladder, you take it out, sew them up, and send them home. Not in your case. My liver was actually adhered
Oh, no.
to my diaphragm.
Oh.
And he said, and in fact, your abdomen was filled with scar tissue that doesn't show up on imaging. And he said, I don't know if you remember or know, but you had a significant abdominal infection at some point in time. And I don't know what he's talking about. I have no idea what it is. But he said, your gallbladder was not diseased. There are not stones. But because I was in there, I was able to cauterize a lot of this scar tissue, which I'm pretty sure is the source of your pain.
Oh, wow.
I know. Go figure.
Wow.
Well, it did help the pain. I did get some relief from the pain, but I still couldn't breathe. Still could not breathe. I went to National Jewish 3 weeks after that surgery, and they put me through my usual paces of test and stuff. And I failed miserably every test that they had given me many times and I'd taken many times just on a routine basis to check monitoring the progress of ILD. And so they put me on oxygen. I needed it. I had a home oxygen machine that I was sleeping with, and I had a portable unit that I was living with. So,
Wow.
So it was almost 24/7 oxygen. And I'm telling you, I felt like and looked like an old woman. I didn't recognize myself.
Wow.
I didn't know who I was. And my husband didn't either. It was awful. It was so awful. And, the only thing National Jewish really suggested was prednisone. They were interested in getting to the autoimmune disease underneath the presenting stuff, And I told them at that time, I said, well, I'm not very keen on taking prednisone. Everybody I know that's been on it says the side effects are worse than what they're trying to cure. And I said, and I am interested in healing from this condition, not just treating it. And my pulmonologist was wonderful and very honest. She said, well, you're at an institution that treats. I said, I know. So I'm going to have to look for something else. I said, I'm not going to abandon. I still will come, but I'm going to look for alternative treatment. And Cheryl, I didn't have an idea of how to even proceed with that. I knew things were out there, but I'd really never seriously looked for myself. It was something I was interested in, but hadn't really looked for resources for. And, I know that quote by Goethe that says, once you're committed to something, all manner of things start to happen and support, doors open and people come in and all that serendipity. And I love and trust that, actually. And I had a friend I was just having a casual conversation with, and she said, I've got a great nutritionist. You might could start there. So I got her name and I called her. She was with the Living Well group. It's an integrative group, all different kinds of specializations. And so I called up there for Christy Hall, the nutritionist, and another woman answered the phone. And come to find out that it was Dr. Sharon Montees. And I tell you, that was a game changer. She heard my story. And while she was surprised, she wasn't shocked. She didn't act like, oh my God, you're going to die any moment now. What do you call? And I said something like, do you think I could heal? Because it was back to that treatment heal. And she said, absolutely. Don't you think you can heal? And I started believing I could. At that moment. She was just wonderful. And she told me that I should start with her acupuncturist, Dr. Heidi Golding. And Heidi is amazing. She does acupuncture, but she also knows frequencies. So there's some frequency stuff coupled with the acupuncture. And it was interesting. I know something about systems. And if you touch a system here, it wiggles over there. She didn't treat my lungs. She treated my liver and my kidneys, because there's a direct relationship if you know Chinese medicine, which I don't really, but I trust it. I've seen it. But anyway, it's interesting. So she's in Loveland. And when I was driving home, I could tell my abdomen was better. I could feel the improvement. I could feel more open. And I'm breathing right now, just thinking about how opening that experience was. And, just one thing led to another. I did go see Christy, the nutritionist, and made a lot of dietary changes. She suspected oxalates. And so I got on a low oxalate diet, which is an interesting thing. And they referred me to somebody real close to where I live, just about 5 minutes from my house, is the Amazon Functional Health Group. And oh, wow, that's another game changer. They had equipment. They run all kinds of tests. I had an AO scan with them, which is, it requires trust and faith. And I had it. Let me tell you, I had it. And so they hook you up to this machine and your brain just starts spewing out everything it knows about your body. It was, I didn't do a thing. It just read my mind. And the printout from that test is like very comprehensive and extensive. And so detoxing happened and other kinds of supplements and stuff. And one thing that's been the theme carrying through was the emotional connection to the condition. And part of that AO scan was what emotions, what feelings, what things are the root cause of all this stuff. And so I had a report on that. And then they gave me some sounds, some like 3-minute little musical segments that go with that particular blockage or that particular emotional issue that I listen to all the time, even now. There are colors and there are octaves, certain pitch that go with emotions and their chakras and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it all, but I trust it. I think God and the universe and healing can happen in all kinds of ways, conventional and none, so I tried conventional and it didn't help me. So alternative became my way. Yeah.
So I'm really curious because, as you know, I was, or I am, or whatever, a respiratory therapist. That was my first career.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about your diaphragm being and your liver being glued together. Did anybody ever address that as maybe that was causing some of either the interstitial lung disease, or because the diaphragm couldn't descend and get as much oxygen, enough airflow in? There would be, I would think, an incredible amount of dysfunction, not only to your lungs, but your liver as well, because of that adhesion between the two.
Yeah. They didn't at National Jewish. And I'm not, here to diss National Jewish. No,
Right.
They do good work. They do good things for people. They just didn't have the fit for what I needed. Everything I've done and everything I've found, I communicate to all of my providers. I want everybody to know what everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
And they really didn't talk to me much about that at
Mm-hmm.
National Jewish. One thing I did at Amazon was one of their machines is a hyperbaric cube.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a treatment in there where, it just forces oxygen into every cell of your body. And I knew I'd been depleted for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, it gave me so much energy, and I felt major steps forward as far as healing goes. And so I was at National Jewish and I said, where's the hyperbaric here? Because that's not a real new technology.
Mm-hmm.
And it's used for wound healing too.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who has had 2 horrible bouts of wounds that wouldn't heal. And I said, ask your wound clinic about hyperbaric. It's supposed to be fabulous for wounds. None of that. There's not one at National Jewish, and there's not one at the wound clinic. And I said, I find that interesting because every single patient you see needs oxygen
Mm-hmm.
in one form or another. The other thing I found curious was there were no breathing lessons or coaches. I came across a fabulous book by James Nestor. It's called Breath.
Mm-hmm.
What a fascinating read about how we have forgotten how to breathe, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on his website and learned some breathing exercises and, used my faithful oximeter all the time. And I mean, after doing just seconds, literally like 30 seconds of these breathings, my numbers would go up 5 and 6 points. It's nuts. And so I took a copy of that book to my pulmonologist now down at National Jewish. I said, please read this. And everybody on this staff or anybody that's associated with this institution needs to be aware of this. We all need breathing exercises. We all need to be coached. Your body, if you give it what it needs, it's gonna respond. And it's amazing how my body was responding to oxygen.
Mm-hmm. And that's such a basic need. I mean, it drives me crazy because I'm going to go on a tangent here. But before the pandemic, of course, I was still doing my ballet classes in, at the ballet studios. And there was one studio where they insisted on turning the heat up really high and absolutely no fans, even in the summer. No, they didn't want any fans because they didn't want to get cold. And there could be 30 people in this room and there's no ventilation. So we're all rebreathing exhaled air. And I would start to get dizzy. I almost passed out a few times. And I was trying to explain to them how much our bodies need oxygen. And I was explaining it from a physiological standpoint. And I said, you are going to get injured because you're depleting or depriving your muscles of oxygen because you don't have enough ventilation in the room. So you will get injured. So it was like, talking to a brick wall.
Sure.
So yeah, it's amazing. It's one of those basic needs. And I think now, especially because everybody is so stressed out, which has an impact in a negative way on our immune system. And it also puts us into that like fight or flight type of thing where you kind of hold your breath and you can't breathe. You can't get into that relaxation, that state of homeostasis and health.
Right. You mentioning yoga, that is something I started about 3 years ago. And it's a different form of yoga. I've done different kinds over the years, but this is kind of new to the US. It's called Kayut
Hmm.
yoga. Chiropractor Fernando, Frederico, sorry, can't remember the first name, but Kayut is his last name,
Hmm.
developed it for gentle aging and joint health,
Mm.
and it is very gentle, but that I felt better even when I was in crisis and on oxygen. The days that I could, and I tried every day to do my yoga online, I could breathe.
Hmm.
I could, I think it's all the things you were saying. My body was in a relaxed state. I was meditative and it was helping.
Movement heals. It's a natural function, movement.
Right,
But
right.
because of the modern living and the modern world in which we do live, and everything is, computerized, television, the phone, and we're not getting out in nature as much as we used to. And especially since we've been in this pandemic situation for the past year, a lot of people are not moving as much as they used to before. And we're told to kind of stay home, don't go anywhere, stay safe. Otherwise, it's going to be very dangerous if we go someplace.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty dangerous to be stationary and
You
standing
know,
still.
I agree. And, just thinking about this podcast made me think of what are the lessons learned. One big lesson that I've learned from all this is I know my body better than anybody knows my body. By golly, you know, and that's what I want all of your people to know and to trust. I mean, the people, all those specialists I talked about and everything, they know things for sure, but they don't know my body and they're not feeling what I'm feeling. And when things don't ring true, don't do it. Now, I believe my mother taught me that. She was very much a partner way back years and years ago. She believed in the power of positive thinking. She believed in being a partner with her doctor. And just because somebody said you need this medicine didn't mean she took it.
Hmm.
She was
So
very intuitive that way.
all of a sudden, it's like, I wanted to jump up and scream, amen or hallelujah, or heard a choir of angels begin to sing, because I love the way that you said that you know your body better than anybody else. And I always tell my clients, you are your best expert.
Yeah, believe that because it is so true.
You,
And the other thing, you are not your diagnosis. Your body is designed, divinely designed to be perfect. And I keep being astounded at how quickly your body responds when you're giving it what it needs. So if you're doing something and it's not improving your situation, quit doing it. It's that Einstein quote that was going through my head when I kept going for monitoring and testing, that to keep doing the same thing over and over again without, and expect different results. I was stuck, on a hamster on a wheel, just running around and going nowhere.
I think a lot of times people get into that situation where they're either in so much pain or they're ill and they have this label on them that
Yeah.
we get so terrified. We're so frightened because we don't know what's around the corner. And then the experts are telling us one thing and we think, well, they must know because they're the experts. But I'm here to say, and just to underline or underscore what it is that you're saying, the experts don't know everything.
They dig down to a certain level, but it's not to root cause. You can maintain with treatment. Big pharma, I hate to say
Yeah.
it, they really have us. They really have us. I mean, it's expensive. I hate to say it, but it is. It's right out of your pocket and it's kind of expensive to do these alternative treatments. But it's your life. It's your life.
It's expensive, but I don't think it's nearly as expensive as
It's
what the
not.
alternative is.
Oh, it cost a lot more, but you're paying the insurance premium. So it's the insurance company and big pharma that's the big winner.
Hmm.
Yes, it's way more expensive, but it doesn't feel like it.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's invisible, because you're paying these insurance premiums, for years and years and years.
Well, and I like what you said about, you're not improving, you're maintaining.
Yeah,
And I think that that's almost, part of the masking the symptoms
that's right.
instead of trying to find out what the cause is. And you're masking the symptoms long enough that the symptoms say, well, I can overrun this medication, and you're spiraling down. And that's basically what happened to me with my back injury, 2.5 years of being a chronic pain patient. It was just horrible until I finally saw the light and said, this isn't working. Obviously, I've got to figure it out for myself. But
Right.
you have to remember too, for people who are listening, that you live with your body 24/7.
Yeah,
And you go and you see an expert or a professional, no matter how deep and broad their base of knowledge is, they're only seeing you for maybe an hour if you're
right.
lucky. The other thing to remember too is that the more you understand about your body, the more you can learn about it yourself. Then when you do consult with any kind of medical professional, either traditional, alternative, holistic, whatever,
Hmm.
you have a lot more information to share with them.
Absolutely.
So you're making their job easier. Plus, you're letting them know that you are not a patient, you are an active participant.
Absolutely. And that I made very clear from the get-go. Honestly, I did.
Good for
And
you.
I didn't abandon National Jewish. I'm not going to.
Mhm.
Part of what I want to do is create cognitive dissonance, I call it,
Mhm.
for them. I want to bother them with my results. They are astounded. I just was there like 2 weeks ago, and my pulmonologist was just giddy with excitement. She said, your numbers are amazing. You're hitting it out of the ballpark. And before I could say anything, she said, are you still doing your alternative treatments? And I said, that's all I am doing is alternative treatments. There's nothing else.
And what was her response? I'm
She was
curious.
glad. I mean, they've acted, all of them have seemed to be open.
Mhm.
But also, I don't want to abandon, and it's tempting to do. Anytime you kind of have a bad experience, or they're not helping you, you just turn your back and walk a different direction. But I want to circle back because I think the bridge needs to be there.
Mhm.
So if somebody comes 5 years from now with my kind of symptoms, they could say, we had that patient one time, and
Mhm.
so hopefully, communication between allopathic medicine and Eastern medicine or whatever else will start happening, because I think complementary medicine
Mhm.
is essential.
I think it's getting a little bit better.
I do too.
When I was in physical therapy school, which was 25 years ago, there was a lot of poo-poo regarding alternative type of practices like acupuncture and chiropractic. Oh my gosh, don't even say that word in front of a bunch of people in a PT school. That just didn't
That's
go over
right.
very well. But a lot of other things that they would just kind of like, it has absolutely no place in medicine. Even Pilates, which I started an entire physical therapy practice based on Pilates, but they said, oh no, it's good for dancers, but nothing else. So fast forward about 20 plus years later, I actually got a call from the school because they knew that I was doing not only Pilates, but I was doing something called Feldenkrais. And they said that some of their students were interested in Feldenkrais, and they wondered if I would bring them to my office, kind of explain it and do a presentation, let them experience it. And I said, well, that's wonderful. I'm just so excited. Why are you doing this? And they said, oh, we now have an alternative like medical practice division two in the curriculum, so people can explore other methods. And I thought that was really a huge step.
Yeah. When you were talking at the beginning about, specialists poo-pooing other specialists, I mean,
Mhm.
I always envision them looking through their straw at my body, and you see what you see and what you want to see and what you understand, but you don't see the other things too. And I just think that's so divisive, and it's not helpful. It's certainly not helpful to the physical body, but I mean, we're like that politically in every other way. And
Mhm.
school, I've spent most of my career in education. And when we separate math from science, from art, from history, the students have to work hard to put that all back together
Mhm.
because it belongs together. And we have separated it until we think it's separate, but it's not. It's not. It all informs the other. And so I think, the more oneness,
Mhm.
whether it's medicine, education, politics, or religion, for heaven's sake, the things that divide us don't belong.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to segue a little bit. I mentioned at the very beginning when I introduced you that you are an Enneagram trainer. Am I
Yeah,
saying it correctly?
you
And
are. Any, just like anybody, Enneagram, 9 points is what it means around a circle.
so
Yeah.
could you describe what it is for the people who are listening to this that have no idea what that is?
I tell you, once you hear it, you will hear it, because I'm delighted to say it's becoming pretty mainstream. Now, when I started studying it about 20, probably 25 years ago,
Wow.
it was on the woo-woo scale.
Mhm.
It was on the periphery. My husband used to laugh at that, and I laugh, but I still pursued it. It's a personality typing system is what it is. So most of your listeners would know about Myers-Briggs, maybe
Mhm.
DISC, Strengths Finder. It's all part of that. But it's distinctive in that it digs deeper. It goes beyond personality into motive. And so it makes you reflect, it makes you question, it makes you dig down and dig up, stuff that you don't even know is there. And yeah, it's very, very transformative if you work it. And, I know that we teach who we are in classrooms. And so I became very committed to helping teachers be the best they possibly could be,
Mhm.
and to understand all of those little bodies that come through their door every day, because it makes me emotional every time I think about it, because it is the most difficult and the most powerful position that anybody can ever hold.
Mm.
Teachers, it's sacred work. It really is. And sometimes I don't know how they get up and go to work every day, because they get hit from every side. They're either the heroes or the zeros
Mhm.
every single day, but their hearts are huge. And I want to do all I can to make life better. And Enneagram does that. It's transformative for people. It's empowering too, because, it gets back to the buried emotions too. There are thoughts and feelings and fears and biases and compulsions that we carry around that we don't even need. We just, as we get socialized and come into, quote, maturity, you do whatever to protect yourself, but it also separates you. And
Mhm.
so it helps you get back in touch with who you truly are. And, the parallel is it's about root cause.
Mm.
So as an organization specialist, I'd get called in to do team building or communication training or strategic planning or whatever it is. But that usually was about treating symptoms, and life would get better for a while and then it wouldn't. I mean, the players can change, but the cultural patterns and problems come back. So that's what I am passionate about, is helping people and organizations improve and be the best they can possibly be.
At the very beginning, you were talking about systems, and
Mm-hmm.
even like, you touch one party of the body and, another one responds.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about the Enneagram, I mean, to me, that just kind of made sense that it's another form of systems.
It is, absolutely. 9 types around this wheel, but it's not just personality types, it's an energy.
Hmm.
And what my work is now is expanding the application of the Enneagram to the organism that
Hmm.
we call organization. It can be a team, it can be a couple, it can be a family, it can be a corporation or an agency. The size doesn't matter. The 9 types are consistent. They are universal across any living system, including your human body.
Hmm.
I'm working with Heidi Golding, that acupuncturist I mentioned earlier now, because there's 5 elements in Chinese medicine,
Hmm.
and I want to understand how it correlates to the human body, those 9 numbers, because it's back to, we understand this system better than any, and people will be able to relate to that. I just find it very fascinating, the whole systems approach to anything, actually.
Well, and I even thought about it when you were talking about in the schoolroom,
Yeah.
how we separated math and science and art and music and all these different history going into all these different categories. And it's like, well, you can't do that. It's the same thing as trying to separate the different systems or organs of the human body. Everything works together. It's not just, you can't separate things and divide them out and isolate them.
And that, I think, is the big summary for what is the difference between allopathic or Western medicine with the system approach that's been going on for thousands of years, in the Chinese system.
I'm almost thinking that it's correlating too, even to the pandemic and how we're treating the pandemic. It just seems so disjointed rather than complete, holistic, systematic systems working together. It just seems silly.
I think one of the big lessons out of the pandemic is how we do belong together. We are one. I mean, the ocean didn't separate, it didn't stop at the boundary of the ocean. It doesn't stop at the mountains. It doesn't stop at the state line. We are one human system. And we're connected, and if we're going to pretend that we're not, we're just going to be a longer time suffering.
Yeah, those are some incredible words of wisdom. So tell us, what exactly are you doing right now, like with your business, with work, with your background in working with the different systems and the leadership development, all of that, as well as the Enneagram. I'm really working on saying that, Enneagram.
Good. Well, keep reading about it because it's fascinating work. Well, I'm starting this business that's called Optimizing Human Potential.
Ooh, I love that name.
I do too. It's interesting, back to schools just for a moment. What we know, sadly, is every year a child is in school, the love of learning, the joy in learning diminishes. Because we separate, we sort, we grade, we judge, all those abnormal things. And sadly, then, I started working with teachers. It's true for teachers too. Many of them. I was a classroom teacher. I had to grow despite the system, not because of it. And I saw wonderful, wonderful teachers needing to leave to survive because the system. I had a superintendent one time say, well, if we could just get the dead wood out of the classroom. And I said, why are you hiring dead wood? and he said, well, we're not. I said, that's my point. Think about who they were when they came into the classroom. They had the world by the tail, There was nothing they couldn't do. But every year they're in the system, they get diminished. And I want them to be optimized again. What is it going to take? Well, it takes attending to all those 9 aspects and having them show up and be in balance. So what I'm trying to do is to bring the best of what I've learned about personal development and the best of what I know about organization development and help create efficacious people and efficacious organizations. That's been my favorite word for so long. And people would say, you can't use that word. People don't know. But now, because of the pandemic and the vaccinations, we know the word efficacy. It's my favorite one. I'm a big believer in showing up, bring all of who you are to the game. If it's your job, if it's your relationship or whatever it is, or the medical appointment, bring all of you into that. And then stand up and speak up. We are all leaders. We all have something to bring to the conversation. And, we need to learn together and create joy. I think life is supposed to be joyful. And
it's supposed to be.
It is. And I think it was Ram Dass said, joy is not the opposite of sadness. It's the acceptance of sadness. You're not going to be happy, happy, happy all the time. But if you have worked through your stuff, as Enneagram gives you opportunity to do, you feel a groundedness and an assurance that spring's going to come and bring all of this forward into the next iteration of life. I think with this situation I'm describing today and others I've had in my life, there are things you wouldn't wish for yourself, but nor would you go back and undo it for what it provides. Every one of these things is an opportunity to learn and grow and become more of who you can be. And I am forever looking, what's the lesson here? What am I supposed to learn? To get out of the pain, for one thing, but to live more fully, more joyfully, more optimized. And, I have been in enough organizations that I know people don't get to bring all of who they are into the workplace either. And they have so much to contribute, but we narrow what we ask of them. I had a wonderful, enlightened boss one time. We had a very small little group, and we were forming a new organization, a new department, I should say. And after just a while, he brought us all in and he said, I want you to journal for 2 weeks. And then we want to meet again. I want you to think about what gifts, what experiences, what hopes, what dreams, what aptitudes do you have that don't get to come to work with you. And it changed everything. We actually shaped this department that was very transformative for our larger organization around our capacities and our passions. It was beautiful. It was so wonderful. That doesn't happen often, but it's lovely when it does.
How can people get a hold of you? How can they find you and find out more about this new venture that you're launching?
Okay. I'm an upstart. I've got a website that's just about to launch. And so there's one place. It would be optimizinghumanpotential.org. And I'm on LinkedIn. And like I said, I'm just getting started. The last 3 years have been an R&D. It's not like I've taken somebody else's content and am now going to go out and teach it and facilitate it. I created the content based on those two bodies of work, the Enneagram and systems thinking, and taking it to a new level. And what it is prevention and wellness. It's not treatment. Just the same for the organization as for the human body. So it's empowering and it's important. It's going to move us ahead, I think.
It's very important and very empowering and just very educational and very enlightening as well.
Yeah. The other big thought I'd like to leave with your listeners is to know for sure that emotions are connected to your disease, whatever it is. It is coupled with every single disease. And that's becoming quite accepted. That's pretty mainstream. But if you haven't dug into that, Louise Hay's work was where I started. She published back in the 80s, You Can Heal Your Life. And she does a lot of connecting the body part and the suffering to the emotion. And so I read a lot of hers. Dr. John Sarno has done a lot about, he's deceased now. Well, so is Louise Hay, unfortunately. But there's things out there, and to know that for sure, and not to ignore the fact that there's hidden, buried emotions. And you don't even have to know what they are to forgive yourself of the shame or the resentment of somebody. Forgiveness goes a long, long way toward healing. And as I said, you don't even have to know specifically, just release it. Whatever it is, wherever it's hiding in my body, whether it's buried or whether you're aware of it, you can heal from it. And until we do, and that's another big missing part in allopathic medicine, is again, separating emotions from the mind, from the body. We are one being and it all works together. So.
And bottom line is we can heal from anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely we can. And again, it's about you are not your diagnosis, and you know your body. And if you just trust those things, you can heal.
So I think that maybe we should either get a bumper sticker or t-shirts made, because that
Oh,
phrase, is pretty powerful and something we always need to remember and be reminded of. You are not your diagnosis, and you can heal from anything.
When somebody tells you that, you know it's true.
Right.
It's like, that's right.
Rather than somebody doing like what they did to me, taking away the hope and what they did to you. You're always going to live with this. We'll manage it. We'll maintain it.
Yeah. Well, you have a choice. You choose to be a victim. And I was a victim for a while. We all are of, the system for a while. But you can be the vanguard. You can be the designer. You can be the creator. So it's a choice, victim or vanguard, which you want.
Ooh, I love that. So Bev, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's been a delight. And if it helps one person believe in themselves and believe that they can be healed, and I'm so glad to have contributed that. Thank you for what you do.
Oh, it's wonderful having you. And of course, I'd love to have you back again and just hear some more of your incredible words of wisdom. Very powerful.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And remember to pay attention to yourself. Remember to stand up, speak up, create joy in your life. But most of all, please remember, you are your own expert and you can heal from anything. And that is the way of the Femininja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.